Well, good morning. Back out collecting a couple of images for the little handmade book. I brought myself round to the east side of Portrush just to see whether I can capture any of that early morning light. And the sun has risen probably 15 minutes ago, but we're just starting to get the first glimpses of that sun on the over the visible horizon. Now, I'm firing off a shot at the moment. I'm using it here on the little part of the fisheries where we have a little disused crane, and I've always liked this thing and I wanted to see whether I could make something of it. Now, I think one of the potential downsides of it is the crane still has its hook falling down, and even though it's very calm today, the hook obviously will be doing a little bit of swing, a little bit of motion, but that might actually work. Again, I'm just gonna pick up this here because we're doing about a 2-minute exposure. Just gonna stop that, take a look and see how that looked. I quite like that actually, and I'm not sure I mind the slight little bit of motion blur on that. Again, shooting this in RAW but in the square format with a black and white film simulation over it, because of course that's what I'm going to be processing this in. As I said earlier, there is a few clouds around. Unfortunately, there are clouds in my frame, and I actually would prefer it then to be uniform texture. And what there is, there's a gap and then there's a little bit of the cloud just in the top of the frame, which I'm not sure is working that great. What I quite like about it as well is that I quite like there's a lot of wires here that are obviously giving some balance or some sort of tension to that crane, and I think those are actually adding some nice little visual elements to the frame as well. So we're getting a bit bright there with that sun coming up. Hang on a minute. Right, well, I'm probably going to fire off one more shot here, and then we'll maybe wander back around again. Would have been quite a nice morning actually to also do some regular photography, but over these next 5 or 6 days it looks like we are going to be getting some nice settled conditions in, so plenty of time for that. But we'll take a wander on. I'll do maybe another shot here, take another wander around and see whether we can pick up another image. And I think, as I said in the last video in this series, I obviously want to collect more that I'm looking to put in the book. I'd originally planned maybe to do 10 in the book. It might be 8, it might be 10, just a very, very small number. But of course, to allow me to kind of pick and choose, I probably want to shoot maybe double that. And these last couple of weeks, as I said in the office, have been pretty difficult to do any long exposure photography because it's been very, very windy. Take another shot here and we'll mosey on. Well, good morning. Welcome back out to Portrush. The last time you saw me, I was bathed in some beautiful light and about to go off and look for another little scene. Well, it's clearly a different day now. Now, for those of you who have seen some of my other videos, especially the moments between, I think it was episode 9, we had a little bit of a kit disaster shortly after making those images that you've just seen. I won't go into the details, but basically the Format Hi-Tech holder, Mark 1 holder, I've always had issues with it. Had issues with a bunch of things with the Format Hi-Tech system. And I thought it was attached to the front of the camera. Turns out it wasn't, and it fell into the ocean. Now, I thought it was gone, but Nicola convinced me to go around and take a look at low tide, and sure enough, there it was in Blue Sea. So she waited out and got it. She was already doing a dip. It's not as if I was like, go you and get it. When I saw it was lost, I immediately sort of thought, right, I'm going to go and completely change my whole filter system. But it's quite expensive to do that, and let's face it, times are not exactly flush at the moment, so I will carry on. It doesn't look like it looks like the 10 stop has survived. I will carry on using the Format Hi-Tech system for now, but I can't say I'm 100% happy with it. I was going to move across to the case system, the magnetic system as well, because I think I'm going to sort of go down the whole digital blending side of things rather than using grads. But for now, I'll carry on using the Format Hi-Tech system. Yet again, the weather folks have got it pretty wrong, because we were supposed to have very little cloud and very little cloud over to the east, but we're about 15 minutes or so away from sunrise, and I don't think that's going to happen. Now, of course, all it needs is a gap and these clouds could light up. But that being said, not that bothered that we're not going to get too much of a dramatic sunrise, because we're out looking to make some images for the little handmade book, and I've brought myself around to this is called the Blue Pool, I think. Now it's a very, very slack tide, a very low tide as well, so we're not going to get any sort of movement in and around the rocks, but I'm going to take a wander down and see whether I can come up with a little bit of a composition. So let's do that, and let's try and not drop the Format Hi-Tech system into the sea this time. I've actually brought myself up high, looking down into the Blue Pool, and one of the issues that I'm having straight away with some of the compositions that I'm looking at is the polarization. Just with my sort of position and the sort of slightly wider angle of the lens, not really getting sort of a sort of consistent polarization across the scene, which is kind of leaving sort of a bit of an unbalanced feel. I've shot a couple with sort of polarized, shot a couple with unpolarized, and I've just been moving my composition about a little bit, but I think that unbalance of polarization, I think, would be a little bit distracting, and it can always be difficult to judge that on the back of the screen sometimes. And I'm sure everyone's been here, you look on the back of the screen and you think to yourself, that looks quite well, looks like it's going to work, but not really. Now there's a couple of little sort of pools of water that I really like. I think I'll have to get a little bit closer to that, because I kind of took a composition, sort of, I'm obviously shooting this for the little book, which would be square format, and then when I'm zooming in on the camera, I quite like the composition that I have with when I'm zooming in, but of course that sort of stops being a square format then. But I might go ahead and shoot a couple of different formats anyway, just to have those in the bag. And yeah, good job I wasn't looking to shoot anything of a sunrise perspective. At the moment I'm only using the polarizer. Ambient light levels are starting to rise obviously, so I might have to throw on a 4-stop at the moment, but that polarizer was giving me 15 seconds exposure time. So given the fact that the waves aren't moving that much, putting on a 4-stop or God forbid a 10-stop where we get into sort of multi-minutes, I don't think there would have been a huge difference in the look and feel of the image. But I shall carry on. Obviously still shooting X-T4, got the 18-135 on, and as I say at the moment, just the polarizer on, and square format with a black and white film simulation. And so far, no kit has dropped into the sea. I'm going to try really hard not to step back and fall into the sea here. So I brought myself down onto the sort of lower level, and I'm actually now using the polarizer along with the 4-stop. And again, what I really love about the sort of composition here is just that sort of contrast between that lovely smoothness of the water, and then there seems to be some lovely textures in the rocks, still having the sort of semi-issue of the sort of unbalanced polarization, but perhaps it works a little bit better with the sort of smaller, more intimate scene. I'm sort of zooming in quite close and just bringing in just a nice little sort of line of rocks sort of from bottom to top. And yeah, with a 4-stop, getting about a sort of 25-second exposure here, so not too shabby at all. It's interesting actually when because I'm shooting both the stills and the video on the X-T4, when I switch to video mode, the colours are actually really beautiful. Now, the benefit will be, obviously I wouldn't be able to use it in a little handmade book, but of course I am shooting RAW and JPEG. Obviously I need to shoot JPEG because I'm shooting the 1:1 overlay, but I will have full access to the RAW file as well, so it'll be interesting to see how the colour image sort of sits with me as well, because some of those greens and blues, and yeah, just be interesting to see. But looking at the colours over here to my right, your left, you know, you could almost imagine that you're in some far distant sort of exotic country with sort of aqua blue green waters. That is until you dip your toe in and it gets frostbite and other bits drop off. But yeah, I quite like so there's a little sort of scene here that I've been shooting. There's a little sort of curve up on the left hand side with the cliffs, and then sort of your eye gets taken away to the right hopefully, and obviously with a slightly longer exposure and getting again about a 25-second just to smooth out that water. But it'll be interesting to see what this looks like in colour as well. One of the fantastic things about this area is what's below your feet, and there's just so much texture and lines and shape, and that's kind of what I'm trying to include. And I was shooting a little scene behind me here where there was just a lovely bit of sort of texture and line and shape coming in on the bottom sort of the frame, curving round, and again making sure I'm including some of that water because I want to have that contrast of the harsh jaggedness of the rocks and that lovely smooth calmness of the sea. And again, the scene that I've just been shooting here behind you, again it's just using the lines just sort of to hopefully lead the viewer's eye through the image. But I think that's where we're going to finish the vlog here. Now obviously over the course of these last two vlogs I've maybe only shown 5 or 6 images at most, but what we'll do is we'll wrap it up here, and there'll be a third part to this series which will be mostly back, if not all of it, back in the office where we actually start to put the book together. And at that point I'll hopefully show you the full range of images that I captured going through that curation process, picking the images for the book, and then obviously making the book itself. Hopefully you've enjoyed this little ramble out. I know it's been split over a couple of days, but I think that's coffee time. Alright guys, until next time, take care. Bye bye.